Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. This is the Wednesday, May 27th, 2026 episode of the Marco Duray Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's kick off the middle of our week and go to work right away with an article I have for us right out of the Hill. And we'll be discussing the status of the war in Iran, which we have to discuss today, among other very, very urgent issues going on with our country. I was looking earlier at a Chiron off Fox News, where Trump has said that I will only sign a great deal. And then just a little while later, it said that they were doing well in talks with Iran. Is that really the case? Can we really say that about what's going on right now with this war? Something tells me the opposite. And it starts with this article. It says here that the White House is pushing back against a draft memorandum of understanding published by the Iranian state media on Wednesday. Now, the White House has come out to refute what was being proposed, saying that this report from the Iranian-controlled media is not true and that the memorandum of understanding they released is a fabrication. Nobody should believe what the Iranian state media is pushing out. Facts matter. Let's go over the facts. I think that's very crucial about where we are right now. Over the weekend, we were hearing time and time again, talks were proceeding well. We were very close again to another agreement. How many times have we heard this coming out of the White House? It seems like every weekend, things are going well, then of course nothing happens. Things escalate. Talks fall apart. What's the reality of what we've been told as of right now? We now know that the Pentagon has probably been the only honest broker in the Trump White House right now, telling Trump that the United States has not depleted 80 to 90% of their stockpiles, or that we've obliterated their entire Navy. That hasn't been the case. We haven't destroyed their Air Force. We still know they have great capabilities with all those. I'm not saying it's greater than ours, but they still have capabilities that function in those roles. Trump is in a position where he's telling us one thing, but something else completely different is happening. Now, the Iranian media, the Iranian government is telling us that they have 120% more missile stockpiles than what they had at the start of the war. That means they're, again, upping their capacity and able to fight more. Now, Trump is in this position. I feel he's in this position where no foreign leader will believe anything he says. I do believe that. I think he's being told something by the Iranians, by the Chinese, by the Russians, and he comes out and tells us something completely different. Maybe it's things that he fabricates on his own. Let me use their words. Fabrication. So in other words, he's selling us a bill of goods, but that's not really what he's buying from them. They're not selling it to him. And he doesn't like that. He doesn't want to go down as a Biden. He doesn't want to go down as an Obama or a Bush or a Jimmy Carter, if you will. He wants to be seen as a great leader. This is part of Trump's idea and concept of how he views himself. But the reality is the Iranians are not backing down in everything I've seen from them. And by the way, I always look for you guys. They stay very consistent about what exactly they want. As I told you on yesterday's show, they are going to control the Strait of Hormuz moving forward. That is not going to change, folks. As much as we might like it to, that's not going to change. They will control it. They will charge a fee or a toll or whatever they call it. Thank you, President Trump. So we've allowed the Iranians to come out from a better position than from prior on this war. We know they want their sanctions relief. They know we know, for example, before any talk of nuclear development, they want their assets unfrozen. They want their money that they gave to the United States, that the United States did not provide the weaponry to them because the Iranian Revolution took place and the United States said, well, we're not going to sell you these arms now. Okay, fine. They want their money back now. They want an end to the war in Lebanon. So Israel's got to come to grips with this. They've got to agree to it, and the war is a part of this. Israel is just as much a part of this as the United States. And if President Trump is the one who's telling Netanyahu what to do all the time, and Netanyahu's this great guy, everything should go well then, Mr. President. Let's use the art of the deal. Let's get out of there, which is what we should have done really the day after this attack took place. We should have just pulled out of the region completely. But let's put an end to it. The Iranians will control that Strait of Hormuz. It's not a violation of international law. They will charge their fees. This is all on the table for them. There's no going back and forth with them. There's no gray zone, if you will. And the sooner we as Americans come to terms with this, I think the better off we'll be because, again, the economy is struggling. The world economy, I should say, is struggling as a result of this. And it's not going to get any better until long after this war ends. It's not just going to be the flicker of a light switch, folks. This will go on for quite some time, the poor economy that we find ourselves in. And you would think in a midterm year that President Trump would consider how the House will do, how the Senate will do, how the state offices will do, because, again, he is the leader of the Republican Party currently. And so how are you going to get people motivated, galvanized to come out and vote for the Republican ticket if we cannot come to a consensus on ending this war and working for the American people, bettering the economy, focusing on domestic issues, not all foreign issues and foreign policy? We'll only see, folks. The time will tell how things will end up working out right now. But this is not good right now, where we find ourselves in. We're looking at possibly losing 40 seats in the House. If what I'm reading is correct, who I'm listening to is what they're saying. Maybe even 10 Senate seats. Again, due to this inability to adhere to the reality of the situation. Most Americans don't want this war. Most Americans are more focused on the economy right now. And they're not happy with the economy. So I ask you again, how are we going to get people in some of these purple states, some of these swing states, to get out and vote Republican again? Because I can tell you right now, most people are not happy. Now, does that mean people are going to go vote Democratic? Maybe in some states they will. I told you before, I've heard from people in Arizona, for example. You got Republicans in Maricopa County, that's the biggest county in Arizona, that are actually switching their party affiliation to Democratic so they can vote out the Republicans. Don't believe me? Fine, but that's what's going on in Arizona. And we see a lot of these tight races now that are swinging in the direction possibly of the Democrats, if we don't get our act together. Now, I don't want to see Democrats win because I know they will not deliver anything to us but more heartache and hardships and misery to us. And, of course, open borders. That's going to be a truism till the end of time. Anytime they're in charge, they will open up the southern border. That's just their plan. That's the way they bring down America. And that's exactly what they want, because it keeps them in power for the entirety of the nation's history. That being said, we've got to come to terms with where we are in this war. The Iranians will be the ones dictating what happens because they're the ones winning the conflict. They're not the ones begging for the ceasefire. And if we don't play our cards right very, very soon and turn this around and turn the economy around, I fear that the Democrats will become victorious. I think the Iranians will take exactly what they're going to take now as they will months from now, should these negotiations stall. Now, here in the article, it says Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on Tuesday that a potential deal to end the war could take a few days. Really? Interesting. A few days. So we're going to give them what they want? Now, he noted that Trump is either going to make a good deal or no deal, adding that the Strait of Hormuz, a vital passageway in the region, needs to be reopened. Again, do they not understand what's going on? I really question this administration sometimes. Do they not understand that everybody that wants to pass through can pass through so long as they go through the Iranians and pay the fee? And then they'll be escorted through the region. That's how it's been working. That's how all these ships are getting through right now. They're starting to figure it out. So no, the Iranians haven't closed anything. They're simply saying, we control this pathway. If you want your ship to come through safely, you've got to go through us. You've got to coordinate with us. You've got to get our okay. And you got to pay the fee, and we will escort you through. Other ships have been doing this right now as I speak to you. So what's this idea? It needs to be reopened. It's already open. And I don't think your naval blockade around it is helping too much as well. Just thought I'd be clear with you on all that. So no deal, however, has been made, and nothing has been made public as to what's being agreed upon. So we're still in the dark about all this. But I can tell you, again, as sure as I'm sitting here, what the Iranians say, what their red lines are, will stand with them. They are not going to capitulate. They're not going to throw away their enriched uranium. They're just not going to do it, folks. And they're not going to talk about nuclear development at all with us until we come to terms with what they want. Those main provisions that I just said to you. Now, out of the Gateway Pundit, they're saying that Trump announced a largely negotiated framework for a peace deal on Saturday, including in the plan a 60-day ceasefire. Again, with the ceasefires. Let's end the war. If you want the reopening of the strait, it will be on their terms, and they'll charge the fee just like at any other port of entry. Think about the Suez Canal, into the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. How do you get through? You pay the Egyptians. How do you get through the Panama Canal? You pay the fee to get through. Is Marco Rubio coming out against any of those? Of course not. This is why this is all so stupid. This takes place all over the world, folks. They want concessions from Iran on nuclear enrichment. Well, they're going to enrich to a certain capacity. I don't know what that would be. I don't know what they would go to. But they will simply not go down to zero. They've made that very clear before. They're not going to just hand over their nuclear, the highly enriched uranium that they already have. They're not going to do that. And the Israeli Hezbollah ceasefire. That's, again, something they want. They do not want this war to resume, as we saw already. So we're in for a long haul here, folks. And by the way, once this ends, and when it does end, and it could be months from now, could be a year from now, I don't know how Trump is going to do this. Again, because he's so intertwined and so obsessed with his image and history, I don't know how this ends. Now, he doesn't want anything to look like a JCPOA, so I don't really know what this is going to look like. I think that's why you're seeing him attach the Abraham Accords to this. So it looks like, well, they're not going to create a nuclear weapon. Finally. Okay, we've already had that. Oh, they're only going to enrich uranium to a certain percentage. Okay, we've already had that too. They're going to allow us weapons inspectors to come in and check their facilities. Again, we already had that in the JCPOA. So what's going to look different for Trump? Now he's going to come out and say, well, the strait's opened up. There will be a fee system. Okay, fine. But now I think what he's trying to do is the Abraham Accords. We have to make sure Israel is safe. So all these countries he wants to sign on to, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all these countries to sign on to this. To say, look, the region is now stable. All these countries have come to peace with Israel. Iran can no longer build a nuclear weapon, even though they were never going to build a nuclear weapon to begin with. Everything is going to go as it was prior to February the 28th. Except we have a much stronger Iran now. And an Iran, by the way, that is not going to relinquish their relationship with Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas. That's not going to go away either. So Trump thinks that he's going to smash all these resistance groups into submission. It's not going to happen. So much for the board of peace in the region, too, by the way. So I think, again, the Abraham Accords are dead on arrival. That's my stance on this. I don't think that these countries, especially not Turkey, based on what I've heard President Erdogan come out and say as of late regarding Israel's aggression in the region, I really don't see them signing on to this. Certainly not Syria or Iraq or any of these countries in the region. I don't even see the Saudis coming to and signing on to this. I don't. Jordan should know that they're on the chopping block next after Iran, so I don't see that falling apart. Egypt, too, I don't see them doing it. They're not happy with what's going on, and they know that Israel's the aggressor. Again, I tell you, these countries are not stupid. They're not as powerful as us, that's for sure. But they're not stupid. They understand exactly what's going on. And they know that someplace down the line, they're next. They're next. And of course, that brings us to our next topic of discussion right now. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This is at a ZeroHedge between Israel and Hezbollah to the north right now. What's going on inside of Lebanon? It says over 70 Hezbollah sites struck as Netanyahu orders IDF to intensify blows inside of Lebanon. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, there's supposed to be a ceasefire right now happening between Lebanon and Israel. Does it sound to you like there's a ceasefire going on? When they've drastically ramped up their military campaign all across Lebanon, hitting dozens of so-called Hezbollah sites, which really is any place they want to hit. Again, look no further than Gaza right now. Blowing up buildings, saying, well, Hamas, they're underneath the building. We got to hit it. We told them an hour ago we're going to hit this building, so everything should be fine. Again, they're seriously escalating this long-running conflict that didn't just start with what took place after October 7th. This has been going on since the 1970s. They've constantly encroached upon southern Lebanon. They want that territory, just like they want the Golan Heights. But in that process, Hezbollah formed, and they've said, no, you're not going to take this land. This is our land, and we will fight you off for this. And time again, they have fought off the Israeli expansion into southern Lebanon, south of the Litani River. Now, Netanyahu has confirmed on Monday that he instructed the military to press the pedal even harder against Hezbollah. Again, that's their code word for taking land, displacing 1 million Lebanese from their homes, telling them never to return. Does that sound like they're just simply fighting Hezbollah, who they deem as a terror organization? How do you think the Lebanese view the IDF? Do you think they view them as a peaceful organization that's working in their best interests? Of course not. Of course not. And by the way, the report has stated that a green light has been given by Washington to allow this to go forth, following increased drone attacks from the Shia paramilitary group backed by Iran on northern Israel. Northern Israel. It's amazing. So they're shocked that Hezbollah is pushing back. They're attacking inside of northern Israel. But they can't see the bigger picture is because Israel has invaded them. And, of course, broken their ceasefire. All at the behest of the United States and President Trump and Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio. And nobody says a damn thing about it. You have Netanyahu and Trump on a board of peace? And after its creation, you have the United States and Israel bombing Iran, killing civilians. Then you have Netanyahu invading southern Lebanon and, of course, continuing their campaign in the West Bank and inside Gaza as well. So here's what it says here also, and this is amazing to me. We are at war with Hezbollah. Just in recent weeks, our brave fighters have eliminated more than 600 terrorists. Now, they call them terrorists. I call them resistance fighters because that's what they are. They don't want to turn over their land to the Israelis because they know exactly what's going on. But that's how our press labels them. Terrorists. Okay. But we are not taking our foot off the gas. On the contrary, I have instructed them to press the pedal even harder. So Iran hears this. The Houthis have heard this. They know exactly what's going on right now. That Israel's ramping up the attacks. Of course, we know many civilians have been killed in a lot of these attacks. They bombed inside of the suburbs of Beirut, just south of the country right now. The city. And we're seeing these attacks all across Lebanon, and people struggle as a result of this. And how come no one in the American press is talking about this? How come no one's saying anything about this? How come no one's saying, listen, this is wrong. They shouldn't be in Lebanon. It's not their land. Hezbollah has not attacked them. Hezbollah responds to their attacks. Now, going back to early March, over 3,180 Lebanese have been killed. More than 9,000 wounded. How could anybody say that this is okay, folks? And again, if you understand Greater Israel, if you understand what the Likud Party and many in the Israeli government are saying about what's going on and what they want to achieve with all this, it's very clear this is all about the expansion of the borders of Israel. This has nothing to do with self-defense. It has nothing to do with protecting the people of Israel. That has nothing to do with any of that. It'd be absolutely foolish of you to think so. So when I hear self-defense, we just heard self-defense again. After we purposely struck two mini boats in the Persian Gulf, killing 4 people, because they may pose a threat to the United States. Why would they pose a threat if we're in the middle of a ceasefire with them and we're in good talks with them? What threat do they pose to us inside the Persian Gulf? They have not attacked us. So how could that be self-defense? And folks, if I sound upset today, it's because I am. This is so ridiculous. This does not have to happen. None of this needs to happen. And it's causing global turmoil and economic downfall in the process. I guess this is going to be President Trump's legacy right here. We're seeing it play out right to a T. He is destroying his presidency right now. He is destroying our economy. Who could come out and say this is a great thing right now? When we're talking about what's going on in a lot of these countries right now. They're struggling. That's going on. By the way, the Gulf Arab states that are proclaimed to be our allies, they're struggling significantly right now as well. Let me remind you, it gets very hot in the Middle East right now. It gets unbearably hot. Without air conditioning, it's an awful place to be. Without food and provisions coming in, it's a difficult place to live. So if ships can't come in because they determine they don't want to pay that fee or they don't want to get out or what have you, there's going to be lots of struggling because you're going to have trouble getting water. A lot of them rely on desalination. If the United States resumes the attacks, which I believe is going to happen very soon, you're going to see Iran striking their desalination. And they may even close down the Strait of Hormuz to these various countries that are, again, aiding and abetting the United States in this illegal campaign against Iran. That's why they're being struck. That's why the military sites are being struck right now. Not because Iran just wanted to do that. Not because Iran provoked it, because we attack them again amid negotiations. Every time we seem to be in negotiations, we seem to surreptitiously decide we need to go in and attack them. That's telling me diplomacy was never on the table and that the negotiations are not going in the way of the United States. Because if they were, we wouldn't be attacking them. Let's call a spade, folks. We can't make a deal with the Iranians because, again, we're not in the driver's seat. They're in the driver's seat. They're not begging for a ceasefire. They're not begging to rush for a deal. They're in it for their survival as a civilization. They threw us off guard. We didn't believe that they had the capability to fight us off the way they have, to hit the targets they've hit with such precision. We didn't believe it. And again, it goes back to the lack of strategy with all this. Trump, who could come out and say, I listened to Netanyahu, I listened to Pete Hegseth, I listened to some of the other morons in my administration. We're getting rid of Hegseth. That's what he should say, by the way. But I don't know if Trump wants these type of people that are going to tell him the truth. I really don't see that when we just saw Tulsi Gabbard leaving now. Now, I've been told since then, she made her announcement about her husband's illness and focusing on that it looks like, for instance, some of the people inside the government, the donor class, have kind of pushed her out of the position. By the way, she's not doing anything anyway. Last year, President Trump came out and said he doesn't believe a word she says. She may have enough of this nonsense. And by the way, we're seeing other people in some of these other positions, the realists that are telling Trump the truth, slowly but surely resigning from their positions in the government. I don't know how you live in an echo chamber, folks. I really don't understand this. We're going to see less pushback from Congress now. People standing up and saying, you know what, this war is not good for us. People saying, yes, this is MAGA. So wait a minute, let me understand this. This is MAGA. That means everyone has to fall in line and do exactly what the president wants to do. That's not MAGA. That's absurdity. Now, if it's a good policy and it follows the Constitution, absolutely. Of course we want these things. We want our conservative values to be pushed, to be implemented, to be followed, to work. But if somebody opposes the war in Iran, we're just simply going to get them out of office because they don't agree with this position? Or they don't agree with this big bloated spending? Again, I'm thinking about Thomas Massey right now. So if you don't fall in line, you don't go with what the president says, that's what's being said right now. You either follow what Trump says or you're out. I ask you the question, ladies and gentlemen, what's the point of having a Congress then? What's the point of having represented legislation to write these bills so the president can then sign them into law? That's not a government that works for the people. It works for the president then. That's giving everyone the message, if you go against President Trump, you will be ousted from your position. We'll throw as much money in as we need to. We'll throw lies out there. And you'll be gone. You won't exist anymore. Now he's going after Lauren Boebert right now. Again, one of his staunch allies, just like Thomas Massey was, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene was. Where is our representatives today? Where are they? I'll give you another example. The American people overwhelmingly want the SAVE Act to be passed. Democrats, independents, and Republicans alike. How come we can't get this passed right now? We have John Thune not doing anything about it. We aren't holding the Democrats to it. Their constituents want this. They want voter ID laws. They want voter integrity. They want free and fair elections. Great. This is something we can all come together on. And instead, we're doing nothing about it. Let's put it to a vote. If it fails, let's show exactly who is not going forth with it. This is a time to put the Democrats on their heels right now, and we're not doing a damn thing about it. And for the life of me, I can't understand it. I really don't understand it. So there we are with Israel and what's going on inside Lebanon. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, this is the status of which we're in with our government right now. We seem to not have a functioning Congress right now. Certainly lackluster right now, I'd have to say at best. And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse inside of Israel, listen to this. This is out of Haaretz. This is Israeli press right now. It says a list of inspectors appointed by the Justice Ministry and the Public Defender's Office to conduct visits to Israeli prison facilities was submitted to Itamar Ben-Gvir. Now he's a part of the Ministry of National Defense. Submitted back in December of 2025, but he has since refrained from signing off on the list and has begun to ignore all inquiries on the matter. Now, Ben-Gvir has also refused to approve the entry of the Israel Bar Association representatives, whose names are on a separate list for the past 3 years. So these people are coming in to inspect the conditions of the Israeli prisons, and I'm sure to inspect and see how the prisoners are being treated. Think no further than the Palestinians. Why wouldn't he want that? Probably because they're not being treated well. Now, Israeli prisons have been restricting Palestinian prisoners' access to essential care, especially since Israel's October 2023 war inside of Gaza beginning. There have been consistent reports of starvation, overcrowding, and sexual violence. We saw that there were cases of rape occurring. And instead of the country coming out and condemning this behavior, you saw people coming out and promoting this, that it's simply okay to do. We have prison authorities restricting the use of medical devices, think crutches or hearing aids or glasses, after Ben-Gvir ordered that families of prisoners be prevented from depositing funds used to purchase such equipment for them. Security detainees include Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza. So it's okay if you have political prisoners from Gaza or the West Bank. That's fine, completely fine. But of course, if Gaza takes 250 Israelis, takes them as hostage, can't have that. Unheard of. Shouldn't happen ever again. At the time when October 7th occurred, I'm just going to be very honest with you. There were roughly 12,000 Palestinians held in Israeli prisons, the ones I'm describing to you right now, with no charge whatsoever to them. They were simply detained against their will, taken as hostage, if you will. Now they sit as, again, political prisoners in these Israeli jails. And notice, ladies and gentlemen, when the hostage exchange took place, which, by the way, I was very much in favor of. I don't want anyone innocent being held hostage. I don't want that to happen. I really don't. Why didn't we see any of the Palestinian hostages being released? Why did we just see the prisoners that Hamas released? Why didn't we see the condition of these Palestinians? I ask myself that all the time. Why not? Now we're getting reports of starvation, overcrowding, probably disease, sexual violence, abuse in some way, being deprived of medical devices. Why are we hearing about this on the Israeli side, ladies and gentlemen? And now we're getting word that Ben-Gvir is not allowing people to come in to view exactly what's going on. You're getting it right out of the Israeli press. You even have senior law enforcement officials saying Ben-Gvir is using his authority to exert pressure on the identity of people who will be allowed to visit the detention facilities. So in other words, people that he approves of, people that are not going to speak out against him. We already know his wife made him a cake with a noose on it because now they're going to begin to hang the Palestinians that have been arrested in the West Bank, in Gaza, and are in front of military courts. Not Israeli civilian courts, military courts. So they can say, well, this person's a threat. Boom, gone. Send him to the gallows. Does that sound like justice to you, ladies and gentlemen? Of course it doesn't. And you should all be very much outraged by all of it. Now let's move on to another very important topic. And let's not waste any time because this is very crucial as well. This is now reflecting inside of the United States. It's by Paul Craig Roberts the other day, and it's a brilliant article, and I hope everyone's paying close attention because this is an attack on our First Amendment. But it's not against criticizing the United States. Let's dive into it. He begins by saying, at all times and places, it's been difficult to speak freely. The United States is very unique, I would have to say. We have a First Amendment right that protects our speech, that we can speak freely to one another, that we can share ideas and thoughts, have debates. That's how a healthy society works, I would have to say. We relish in that First Amendment, and it was very crucial to our founding fathers. But even the founding fathers had the Sedition Act of 1798, criminalizing statements against the U.S. government. Shortly thereafter, President Thomas Jefferson got much of it repealed. So in other words, free speech was free again. We see these attacks all the time. Hate speech. We can't have hate speech in this country. If you have hate speech, it's got to be done with. Got to do away with. So you can't speak about certain things. It's just not politically correct, if you will. When the hell did Republicans become politically correct? That's what I want to ask you. Right? You can't say men are men, and women are women. You can't say that anymore. Can't say it. It might offend somebody. You might offend somebody. Mr. Gervais, you can't say those things. Oh, okay. Does anyone want to live in that sort of society where you have to walk on eggshells? You don't want to offend anybody. But it's okay if you're offended, as long as you're a white male conservative. That's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Offend them all you want, especially if they're conservatives. Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. Now, we've had issues with this before. I've talked about a little bit of this with you, pertaining to some of these presidents I'm going to mention right now to you. Let's look at President Lincoln. During his 1861-1865 invasion of the Confederate States of America, he had a de facto Sedition Act. Lincoln used his executive orders, right? Remember I told you Lincoln was one of the first presidents that really began to clutch the power of the presidency. Using executive orders, using military directives, martial law, the suspension of habeas corpus to shut down free speech. He didn't want anybody criticizing him. That's why if you look at, well, they call it the Civil War. It's really not a civil war. It's an invasion from the North into the South that had since seceded from the Union, making its own country. Now, at the time, Lincoln had 300 Northern newspaper editors in prison, shutting them out. Why? Because they were criticizing his actions. Criticizing what he was doing was not constitutional. So that doesn't fly under President Lincoln. It's a violation of our rights. Now, fast forwarding to 1918, Congress passed a new Sedition Act that applied when the U.S. government, again, was at war. Now, this law prohibited speech and opinion that put the U.S. government and its war effort in a bad light. And that bad light, of course, was that Woodrow Wilson promised Germany no territorial loss or reparations in exchange for an armistice. Again, later betraying that promise. We saw what took place with the Treaty of Versailles, that as the British economist John Maynard Keynes, whose theory on economics is a bunch of garbage, but nonetheless correctly predicted the lead up to World War II. That's what took place there. Now, President Trump, fast forwarding to current day, has declared now his own Sedition Act, issued not by Congress, but increasingly becoming an irrelevant government institution, as Paul Kirk Roberts correctly points out. What's the point of having a Congress if the president is just going to act on his own? He's going to make law of things on which, through executive order or just by his own edicts, and circumventing Congress. What's the point of this organization? Why have it? Why have checks and balances? But he had his own personal lawyer, that would be Todd Blanche, now serving as the acting U.S. Attorney General, who's doing his bidding right now. Trump's very own Sedition Act, which again is very unique. It now protects criticism not against the U.S. government, but of against a foreign government, that being Israel. Don't believe me? Let's dive into it. Says here, the U.S. Department of Justice says President Trump has made clear that this administration will not tolerate anti-Semitism. And the Department of Justice is committed to implementing that directive. Now, what is anti-Semitism, folks? It means any speech against the state of Israel or what Israel's doing. So in other words, if I read my last two articles to you pertaining to what Israel's doing, what Netanyahu's doing, which by the way is illegal, it's a violation of human rights, what's taking place inside their jails, hanging people without any crime just because they feel like it. Where the hell's the UN, by the way, might I ask you, that we pour money into? Just another front group, it seems to be. Where is the justice for anybody? Nobody knows. Now, it says here, understand that the U.S. Department of Justice is now the protector of Israel. This is back to Paul Craig Roberts talking. As is the U.S. military, as is we, the U.S. taxpayer. And anti-Semitism simply means any critique of Israel. So if I'm critiquing Israel's illegal advance on Iran on February the 28th, dragging us into the war, I guess I'm guilty of this, ladies and gentlemen. I guess you've got to lock me up and throw me away now. No free speech on this show. Just read the talking points that you're getting. Self-defense, self-defense, self-defense. What a bunch of crap. I can't even believe this. I'm reading this to you in 2026. So, for example, if I were, or anybody were for that matter, talking about Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people, reading their own quotes, sharing that with you, sharing what's happening on the ground, looking at apps like TikTok, which I don't have, by the way, but I've seen footage of it. What's taking place, people that have been on the ground there, reporting what's going on when they don't get killed by an Israeli strike. But if you talk out against that, or let that be known that Israel is performing genocide and ethnic cleansing inside Palestine, well, of the Palestinian people, Israel's own interference in tenure decisions of U.S. universities, we've seen that before, the hiring and the contracting policies of state governments, such as Texas and Florida right now, Israel's funding of the primary defeat of Thomas Massie. We saw that. AIPAC was more than pleased to come out and say, look it, we've got our guy. Ed Gallerine, who none of you know. Congratulations. Best money we could buy right now, because now Thomas Massie is on his way out. We're going to talk about Israel's assassination of foreign leaders. We can talk about the suspected assassinations that have occurred under the Israeli government, the suspicion that Epstein was a Mossad agent, collecting blackmail information against Americans, and in a position to influence U.S. foreign policy, particularly in the Middle East. Again, look no further than Netanyahu. We know exactly what he's been doing. Why? Because Trump came out and told us. Israel was going in first. Marco Rubio reiterated this. So Israel's going in first. That way we have to go in first. When were we connected at the hip with Israel, ladies and gentlemen? Why was Netanyahu inside the Situation Room, sitting at the head of the table, dictating exactly what to do? Nobody seems to be able to answer any of these questions. So there was no imminent threat, in other words. And again, this goes against Americans in a position to influence what's going on in the Middle East. So we have no say. Our government is bought and paid for. Every thought, every question, every statement of fact can be interpreted as hostile to Israel. Therefore, you're deemed anti-Semitic. Thomas Massie was just asked this last week before his election. And he said, no, I'm not anti-Semitic. I simply am critiquing what this government is doing, and I don't agree with what Netanyahu's doing. The schmuck from CBS, so do you want to tell me if you're anti-Semitic or not? I would have told him to go straight to hell. How about that? How about that? It's unbelievable. But it will not be tolerated by the U.S. Department of Justice, so-called. More like the Department of Injustice. You thought Merrick Garland was bad. Look at this. This is absurd. Now, clearly the Trump regime, essentially a Zionist regime, again, I'm going back to what Paul Craig Roberts is saying, has no intention of permitting any correct information to be aired. So again, shows like mine, where the facts are the facts and hard truths thrive, we can't speak of these things. So if you challenge or taunt the regimes and what they're saying, what's coming out of the White House, maybe what's going on in the war in Iran, again, linked again to Israel, this is for Israel. It's not for the United States. Iran poses no threat to us. But they do pose a big threat to Israel's hegemony in the region. Just thought I'd share that with you. Now, he said you're likely to shut down or be shut down like Colbert, which again, I don't know if that was really the case. We know Colbert's ratings were in the toilet. But we do know that Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Lauren Boebert, now she's the next one on the list, on the chopping block because AIPAC cannot buy them off. Just thought I'd share that all with you. Now, let's kind of fast forward to what we're doing right now and see where we really are right now. America now has a president who goes to war at the request of his most important campaign contributors. Again, think of who put the most money in for him. Miriam Adelson. Paul Singer, again, oil tycoon. What did he get? He got his invasion of Venezuela. He gets access to all of the oil in the Aramco Belt that they're so happy to give us right now, all of a sudden. Others as well. And again, it's all on Israel's behalf. The legal advisor to the U.S. Department of State, Reed Rubenstein, has penned a justification for Trump's military action on Iran, which states that the U.S. initiated its military campaign against Iran, Operation Epic Fury, at the request of and in collective self-defense of its Israeli ally. So again, there was no imminent threat, ladies and gentlemen. They're saying this right to you. But I can't point that out to you, apparently, because it's anti-Semitic. Note that the State Department defines aggression as self-defense. So in other words, we can blow up those two boats in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. That's self-defense now, even though they did not attack any U.S. vessel in the region. So clearly, under President Trump, the United States of America now commits its resources and its lives of its military personnel to the achievement of the Zionist agenda of Greater Israel. Again, there's Greater Israel. Again, you could look all this up, ladies and gentlemen. So Americans are now taxed. They're supposed to die for Israel's domination of the Middle East. Iran is that last power in the region that will stand up to them, that funds the proxies against this hegemony and expansion of their borders. And if you dissent, if you don't go along with the narrative, you are punished as an anti-Semite. and they'll come after you. That's where we are today. And on that note, I don't have to say, when the Israeli lobby can cancel the First Amendment, you know that the United States is no longer a sovereign country. That's what Paul Craig Roberts has concluded right now. And President Trump's anti-Semitism policy, again, cancels that First Amendment. And if it is used by Americans for critique of a foreign government, Israel, for their government policies, such as genocide in Palestine, you get shut down. If you speak out against it, if you're in the government, you get shut down. We'll find somebody else to replace you. Now, I don't know how we can sit here and say to ourselves that things are better. This is MAGA or America First. I don't believe that at all. When President Trump ran in 2015, he never spoke like this. He never ran on policies like this. He never attacked the First Amendment like this. But American patriotism now requires your patriotism to Israel. Does anyone want to show me where that is in the Constitution? I don't think you'll find it anywhere. In fact, I don't think the founders would be very pleased about where we are. And, I've talked with you about this in the past. After the founding fathers had all served their office as presidents and in the government, we see kind of a divorce from our reality from the founding itself, which is why I mentioned that to you on Memorial Day this week. I said that first generation that stood up for all those rights and those values and the limitation of what comes out of the White House, or what government can and cannot do. We're so far away from that right now. Now we're completely fine, and we actually have people, morons, if you will, on social media and even in the media and academia and press and wherever. Morons who have no idea what it means to be free. That if you go up against, like Thomas Massie did, the war in Iran, speak out against Israel, speak out against what Epstein did and his cohorts, or put light on that, you gotta go. You gotta get out. Look at this. You can't be an American if you don't love Israel. Look at that. That's the latest mantra right now. That's amazing to me. I didn't know I was required to love a foreign nation created by 1948, a state vote mandate, even though the State Department told Harry Truman not to vote for it. But now you've got to love it, folks. But you got to hand it to those Zionists. They've even stolen our patriotism. Brilliant article by Paul Craig Roberts. I implore everybody to go read it. It's quite a bit longer. I'm not going to hone in on every little aspect he wrote about it, but he's right on everything there. And he speaks out against that all the time. That's why he has his own page. So he can speak freely about these things, because who else is going to publish that? Nobody, unfortunately. But again, folks, I tell you these things not because I hate Israel. I really don't hate any other countries. But I don't have to back these countries. I don't have to back what they stand for. If Israel wants to go to war with Iran, have at it. What the hell do I care? Do it on your own term. If that's your plan, go for it. Doesn't mean I hate people. I hate people that lie to us and bring us into these wars, though. These people with these nefarious agendas, absolutely. Taking away my rights, my representation, getting them to play ball for you? Who the hell are you anyways? But this is where we are today, folks. This is how our Congress is bought and paid for. And it's sad, folks. It's sad. We really should be getting big money out of government. And, of course, these campaigns. Because then we're beholden to these people. That's what most people don't understand. And Trump has made that very blatantly obvious who exactly he works for. Unfortunately. I no longer believe it's the American people. Despite all his great intentions when he got into office, it's very, very clear quickly what took place. That's why I couldn't really understand 2020. I really couldn't. I said, why is Trump letting this moron Fauci run the government? Why is he getting up and making all these speeches and showing off his wonderful suits? This little twerp. Why are we letting him shut down the government? Why are we letting him shut down if people can go to work or what they have to wear? Or all this other nonsense. Take a vaccine. Using OSHA to coax businesses into forcing their employees, which they can get less than a damn about, more than less, to take an experimental shot, which I don't even know if you can even classify that as a vaccine. And by the way, how many people got those shots? They didn't want those shots. And how many people got those shots that had lots of side effects that came along with it? Lots of people, folks. Lots of people. But Trump was all about that. He was the one that came out with Operation, was it Warp Speed or Warp the Seed? I don't know. Which one was it? I got to be honest with you. I heard that one from someone else I was listening to speak, and I said, that is so brilliant. I got to share that with other people. All right, folks, let's go on. Let's go on. I wish I had better news for you, folks, but today I really don't. Nothing really positive, especially in the Iranian front. Let's move on, though, to an article from Bloomberg. It says, as Americans confront a surge in prices at the pump, another inflation wave is headed to the grocery store. How many times have I been telling you this? I've been telling you this ad nauseum. I almost get sick telling you this all the time, but this is where we are. I said this is going to happen if we go to war. And where are we? We're now seeing the prices at the grocery store going above average pace. In April, they rose by the most in nearly 4 years. An economist said the impact of the Iran war and, of course, a potential El Nino weather will show a pattern will only add pressure into 2027. We haven't seen the start of it. We really haven't. We have not gotten to the worst yet at the pump, at the grocery store, at the retail store. Now, the U.S. will obviously be hit with their finances from higher grocery bills, which is set to intensify just ahead of the November midterm elections. Maybe that'll be good for Trump, who knows? But it's going to be amplifying affordability as a defining issue, and to a greater extent than the surge in gas prices. The slower-moving food shock will be difficult to reverse quickly because of the size of the autumn harvest is determined by the planting decisions made in the spring. That's happening right now. What have I told you has been happening right now? It's not in this article, but what have I been telling you? I said 35% of the global fertilizer, that'd be the urea, the nitrogen, all those things that are necessary to have fertilizer, that the United States utilizes, by the way, is not going to be there. You've got 70% of American farmers saying either they don't have the money or they simply don't have the product itself, the fertilizer, necessary to utilize to create that same crop that they have right now. That is really scary, folks. Now we look at the slimming down of the herd sizes in America. Another big problem for beef and what have you. So it's going to be a challenging year. It's going to be very, very rough. And that's why I always tell you to make sure you're stocking up on food and what have you. Because food is going to become less affordable and consumers should be prepared for it. Again, look into food buckets. I have some of my own. I have a couple months supply of that. I might have to stock up more, folks. I really don't know where we're going to go with this. And again, if you can't plant crop, you don't have vegetables or fruits, you don't have soy or corn, which they feed most of the cattle in this country, how are you going to feed them then? What are you going to do then? Now, the latest USDA food price outlook published on Friday projected a 3.2% advance in grocery prices this year, and expectations inflation could rise to 4 to 4.5%. So it's going to hit your wallets quickly, but let me just make this very clear to you. If the mix of bad weather and lack of fertilizer come to, which I do believe is going to happen, you're going to see a lot of empty shelves. And as a result, you're going to see a lot of farmers going out of business. And again, if we're looking at record heats, all these things like that in the summer, and again, lower or smaller herd sizes, it's going to be very detrimental. You're not going to have the ability to buy the food that you normally would buy. So again, I tell you this, as always, make sure you're stocking up right now. The U.S. saw its warmest ever start to the year. Temperatures running about 6 degrees Fahrenheit above the average to the end of April. And again, that affects the crops, the domestic crop production right here in the United States. No, I'm not selling you climate change. Don't yell at me, okay? Don't throw your phone yet, okay? Don't turn me off. But this is what's happening this year. We had a warm year. It happens. That is going to affect the crops in this country. Again, folks, I wish I had more to say that was better, but I really don't right now. Again, we're looking at oil prices falling, though, on Wednesday. A lot has to do with the talks with Iran looking positive on the front of it. But as I told you before, Don't expect it. It's going to shift around. West Texas Intermediate futures tumbled to 4.12%, just sitting below $90 per barrel today. Again, they're still up, though. Brent crude falling down to roughly $95.78 per barrel. Those are going to go up soon. Once the realization that nothing else is coming in and we have a supply chain issue with oil, those prices are going to start skyrocketing. We haven't seen the spikes just yet. What do I mean by that? I mean, we haven't seen the supply fall out from us yet. That hasn't come to yet. So those high prices we have, it's simply not hitting us just yet. All right, folks, let's go into my last line of business right now. Let's look at something positive going on with Ken Paxton winning. And what I really like about this, first of all, I like Ken Paxton a lot. I wanted him to be the Attorney General of the United States. He should have been the Attorney General. Why Trump didn't choose him, I have no idea. Why he chose Pam Bondi is, again, I have no idea. Maybe he saw her as an empty suit. I don't know. Empty skirt, whatever. But I will say this about Trump. Who he endorses, he's got the magic touch with that as of late. Even though I didn't agree with what he did to Thomas Massie, I like Ken Paxton. I would have chosen him over a John Cornyn, who's more of a, establishment type of Republican. But, they threw a lot of money against Ken Paxton, and yet he still came out and won because I think he had the golden endorsement from President Trump. Again, you might not like Ken Paxton. Maybe he comes with some baggage. I think he can win. I think he'll defeat James Tallarico. He's got to do that, by the way. We can't have somebody as stupid as good old Dim Tallarico coming in at all. That'll be detrimental, but we're in a lot of trouble, I'd have to say. We've got all at the expense of chasing, flipping Democratic seats, maybe in Georgia, maybe in Michigan. I don't think that'll happen in New Hampshire. It doesn't look like it. But I think that Ken Paxton would be a decent candidate, especially for America First. He is one of the attorney generals, though, that seem to be in favor of anti-Israeli boycott, though. So I think he plays on that side of the fence. That's probably why it was okay that he ran. That's maybe why Trump chose him. I don't know. But as far as the border and things of that nature, the economy, Paxton is good in that sense. Okay, he is good on that. So I'm at least happy about that. I'm not happy about, again, maybe he would go with this new Sedition Act of President Trump's using against Israel, or with Israel. But, First Amendment, very important to us. Again, if he goes against that, then I'm obviously opposed to that. But what I've seen him do, when he went up against the Biden administration, when they were clearly breaking immigration laws, I thought that Ken Paxton was great. And again, I think Ken Paxton would make a great attorney general. I really do. However, is this going to play out? Are we going to see these types of wins coming across, like, for example, in a lot of these swing states going forward? I don't think so. I really don't think so. That's part of the problem. Now, I want to play you Bill Hemmer. He was on with Sean Hannity last night, and he kind of talked about Trump's, what would I say, his track record in terms of who he endorses. Let's take a listen.
This is his scorecard, okay? He has endorsed 8 governors. Now, some of these races weren't real close, didn't have a lot of competition, but some of them did. I mean, we saw what happened in Louisiana, the primary of Bill Cassidy. We saw what happened a week ago tonight with Tom Massey in Kentucky. And now we're seeing it again tonight, okay, in Texas. Governor level, Trump endorsed 8. He won 8 times. U.S. House, 101 endorsed. He won... 101 endorsed in the House, and he won 101. Let me put on the pencil right here and show you this. U.S. Senate, Sean, he has endorsed 8 candidates. And prior to tonight, he had won 8 times. And now you can take the endorsement from 8 to 9 endorsed, and from 8 to 9 winner.
It's pretty remarkable, though, the track record he gets with his endorsement. And again, right now, he's not doing very well in the polling. So either the polling's very off, or Trump just has the magic with the Republicans right now. Will that translate to a positive midterm turnout? I don't know. One thing I do want to say about this race, though. Again, I'm happy Paxton won. You know, I like Paxton, okay? But I was looking at the turnout comparison table, and it looks like, just right now in the primaries, the Democratic turnout for James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett had over 2.3 million people turn out. This is in a red state, Texas. The Republican turnout, however, was sitting right around 2.2 million. Now, obviously, folks, we need people to come out during the general election. That has to happen. If we want a Paxton Tallarico victory, we want Ken Paxton to go to D.C., not James Tallarico. So that could be detrimental. We've got to get people to turn out. That has to happen. We've got to be on offense right now. And that's why I'm saying, folks, Trump has got to turn things around now. He's got to start turning things around with the economy. He's got to end this war. He's got to present something positive to the American people. If he doesn't do that, he's going to lose, and rightfully so. That's the only thing I can really say to you right now. Folks, thank you for being here today. As always, I appreciate you so much. That'll do it for today's show. Make sure you're always staying prepped with food, water, medicine, fuel, money. Again, I told you that the food prices are going to go up, and possibly the supply will be diminished as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy. God bless.